Um, First of all, Happy New Year, and thank you for coming today. I know it's a little unusual for me to hold a sort of postseason press conference. I didn't want to make too much of it, but it's been a very, very unusual season, and that's really the reason. I've spoken to many of you after games in the locker room and just said, you know, I don't think it's my role to talk after games or during the season. I've stuck with that really for years and years, because I always feel during the season the attention really should be on the coaches, the players, and don't become part of the story. It's a long season. The NFL's a marathon. It's not about each individual game when your emotions are riding high. And you know, I just think that that's the approach that I've always taken. But I do feel, because it was such a both frustrating and disappointing season, and also the timing of the season coming right after the lockout and going right into preseason, free agency and preseason games and all that, it kind of, I wanted to speak at times, but held myself back. So here we are. This season was, without question, the most disappointing season since I've owned the team. You know, you go through, you're only human, you go through all of the range of emotions during the season, but the primary emotions, I think, are anger and frustration, because you think you have, you know, you're coming off an NFC's championship last year, first place the year before, going to the NFC championship game the year before, so you're not in any way thinking that if you are aggressive in free agency, make a trade for a Pro Bowl cornerback, and continue to implement and improve the team with good young players. And Michael Vick coming off a season where he was second MVP, second to Tom Brady as MVP of the league. There's no way, I don't think anybody in this room, and certainly myself, could have imagined that we'd be sitting here with the season already ended. This is, it's not only unacceptable, it's very, very disappointing, and anyone who, you know, in my mind, doesn't feel the both disappointment and anger is just not getting what we're all about. We're a team, and Andy is a coach that's used to being in the playoffs 9 of the last 12 years, and it's just, you know, completely unacceptable to be 8-8 and watching these other teams play and starting next week. Incredibly, incredibly disappointing. That being said, I think when you're going through a season, the first half of the season, you know, I told most of you, I think in August, that I viewed us maybe not the way a lot of the media, national press had, as co-favorites or favorites to be in the Super Bowl. I thought we had a very good team, but, you know, I regarded, as I said to all of you in August, that Green Bay and New Orleans were the teams holding the last 2 trophies, and I thought they were the most formidable teams in the NFC. I still believe that. What I was hoping was that we would, by taking some of the player moves and in every aspect, changing some schemes, doing all the things that we did in the offseason, although very short offseason, that it would bring us closer. We were looking at a team in Green Bay that had, I think, 17 players injured when they just got into the playoffs. Edged us in a very, very competitive game and went on to win the Super Bowl. But I felt with them getting all those players back, they were a considerable step ahead of us. I thought New Orleans was too. You know, I thought the first half of the season for us, the only word I can use is maybe dismal. Just unfathomable that we could have the record we had the first half of the season. Not only was it ludicrous to think we were gaining ground on Green Bay and New Orleans, but we were losing ground to many other teams in the league. It was terrible. At some point, I guess, you know, we had certain games that we played awfully well. You saw what we all hoped we could be. You know, looking back on the Dallas game in particular, and a few others in the middle of the season, that you just thought, you know, maybe the team had it together early enough, and now we were going to play the ball that we expected. That didn't happen. It happened in different football games, but there was no sustaining of that excellence whatsoever. And yes, the team clearly gelled and came together at the end in the last month, but that's too late. There's no legitimate excuses in my mind for this team to take that long to gel and come together. You know, I think there's a lot of optimism to be gotten from that gelling, from the schemes finally working, from the players being utilized and reaching some of their potential. There's a lot of goodwill and optimism and confidence going forward, but to think there's any legitimate excuses for taking that long to come together, I think is misplaced. I think that there's a lot of good that happened in the last month, and a lot of realism has to be looked at it as well. You know, I sit back as the owner, and like any of you as fans and as people in the media and whatever, you do have your full range of emotions. There's times when you're just angry and frustrated. Other times you're trying to convert that anger and frustration, which I try to do, to cool analysis and just where are you and what can you expect and where are, you know, what is to be expected. There's a lot of things you have to like and I like about the last month of the season. However, in reality, and it's the way the NFL schedule was, we weren't playing Green Bay, New Orleans, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and some of the best teams in the league. So there was no opportunity to prove. We proved we could dominate the last 4 games of the year against teams that weren't that competitive. And there's a lot to be said for the players coming together and the coaching staff holding this group together in a way that was impressive. But, you know, to hold on to that as the reason to be completely optimistic is, I think, fool's gold. I think you have to take it in real steps and say what was taking place. And that was sort of the role of taking a real hard look at the season. And you know, I do it every year, but this one I thought was the most complicated to analyze of any season in memory. The differential between the expectation and the result was dramatic. So when the big decision was what to do about the head coach and the coaching staff, I think that was, you know, number one on the agenda as soon as the season ends. And to that effect, to that matter, you know, I've spent weeks trying to analyze that, meeting with all sorts of people internally and externally, some of the best minds in the business, and really trying to evaluate the football team, the players, the coaches, the whole gamut. And the things that I look at in that analysis, I think, are threefold. One is the track record of the coach. Second is taking a look at the more shorter-term history of the coach in terms of the last 3, 4, 5 years. And the last is, and probably the most important, is the intangibles. So my job is to try to figure out, amidst feeling all the frustration and anger as a fan, which I experience daily, and try to come to the best conclusion with that analysis. On a track record basis, it's easy to look at, and it's easy to come to a conclusion just on track record that yes, we've been in the playoffs 9 of the last 12 years. Does Andy Reid bounce back when a team, which it doesn't do very often, doesn't make the playoffs? It's only happened 3 times. Both times, 3 times, double-digit win seasons the next year, and a trip to the NFC Championship game. That's what you're looking at in terms of what you would hope would continue in terms of this year missing the playoffs when you look at Andy Reid's track record. When you look at the track record of trying to be more recent about it, not just backloading and looking at all those championship game appearances, what's happened the last 3 or 4 or 5 years? I think that's very important to look at. And taking a perspective on that in terms of since 2008, there's really only been one team that's made the playoffs more than the Eagles, and that's the Ravens. Then you go back to 2006, and no team has made the playoffs in the NFC more than the Eagles. So you've got to be in the tournament to be able to win a Super Bowl. That's the singular goal. But it's hard enough to get into the playoffs, and this coach and his staff have a superb track record of getting to the tournament. The intangibles, though, are the overriding factor for me. I look at the players, number one, how do they gel and how do they feel about this coach? What I don't look for is a player's coach where the players are very happy to have a coach. I want a coach that coaches hard. And how do the players respond to hard coaching? And this group, you know, as some of you know, I'm at practice most every day and during the season. And this was, contrary to the 8-8 record, I think one of the best groups in terms of motivation and energy at practice I've ever seen. So there was always this odd dynamic of having a practice that was terrific, and a series and weekly, daily practices that were outstanding. The motivation, the focus, the attention to detail, the adjustments going on, and then in the games, yes, we might play well for 2-3 quarters and have the lead, but the consistent loss of games in the fourth quarter was bitter for me and bitter for all of us. The coaches, you have to look at the head coach. Does he have the fire in his belly? Does he have what it takes to take a team far into the playoffs and have a shot at the Super Bowl? It's a grueling profession, as all you know. Andy Reid, to me, not only has the love of the players and their respect, but he also has the fire in his belly to be the best. That's another intangible. A third intangible is, what is the view of Andy Reid in terms of players around the league and coaches around the league? Do players want to come here to play for Andy? That very intense free agency period was somewhat of an eye-opener in that we would have the choice of players that you wouldn't have dreamed one franchise would have their choice to acquire. And the main reason was, I think, that the coach had a reputation around the league as almost always getting a team to the tournament, having a shot to the Super Bowl, and a coach that respects the players, but not in a soft way, but in a hard way. Tremendous respect around the league when you ask any of the top football minds in the country and other teams' personnel as well. Those are some of the intangibles. There's many more I'll get into, you know, and answer your questions, but attracting talent, having the energy to succeed and motivation in a huge way, having the anger to move forward. Do our players and the coaches have that anger? You got to have the anger, you got to have the motivation, the dedication, and the focus, and the talent. And you know, my answer to those questions is yes. That's why I want to see our team coached by Andy Reid next year, and I can't wait to see that team play. I wish it was next week. I wish the season started in May or April, and then we could do that, but there's no doubt in my mind, if our focus is on trying to win a championship next year, the best coach for that is Andy. You know, we owe as a franchise to Philadelphia the singular pursuit of winning a championship, and that is the rationale for it all. And that's, you know, that's why I want Andy back, and that's why I'm amidst all the anger and frustration, really excited about this team. I've been around the players every year, and this is a special group. It's a talented group, and it's a group that we brought in a lot of good players, and the payoff wasn't this year, but the payoff has a chance to come soon and be really great. So I'll open it up to any questions, and thanks again for coming.